My sister tried to destroy my life from the shadows for 4 years. She stole my money, poisoned my reputation, and nearly cost me my degree. And she did it all with a smile from the guest room of our parents' house. She thought she was so careful, so untouchable. She didn't know I'd been collecting every single piece of evidence, like gathering stones for a wall. And I didn't build that wall to hide behind. I built it so that on the day she finally tried to shove me off a cliff in front of everyone we knew, she'd be the one to slam into it, face first. If you've ever had someone in your life who smiled to your face while sharpening a knife behind their back, hit that like button. And if you believe that the quiet, meticulous people are the ones you should never, ever underestimate, subscribe. Because this is a story about what happens when the person you've spent your whole life looking up to decides they'd rather watch you fall. The first cut, the one that really bleeds, isn't always a knife. Sometimes it's the slow, imperceptible cooling of a sun you've been basking in your whole life. For me, that sun was my older sister, Ariana. Growing up in Portland in a house that always smelled of rain-damp wool and my mother's peppermint tea, Ariana wasn't just my sister. She was a force of nature, a golden child with a laugh that could make my dad's stern expression crack like an egg. She was charismatic, effortlessly beautiful, the kind of person who walked into a room and the oxygen just rearranged itself around her. And I, Jolie, 4 years younger, was her permanent satellite, her biggest fan. I learned the contours of my own personality by how they reflected her light. If Ariana was bold, I was thoughtful. If she was the star, I was the stagehand, happy just to be close to the glow. I learned to be small so she could be big. I'd downplay a good grade, mumble an accomplishment, because I saw the way my parents' eyes would flicker to her after praising me, a silent check-in. Is Ariana okay with this? It was never malicious, not then. It was just the ecosystem of our family. Ariana shone, and I provided the respectful, admiring shade. I convinced myself I preferred it there. It was safer. The shift was so subtle, it was like watching a glacier move. High school. I'd always been a good student, quiet in the back, nose in a book. Ariana was the social comment. Her grades fine, but her real report card was the number of invitations in her locker. Then sophomore year, I aced the AP psychology exam. It wasn't a trophy or a crown, just a score on a piece of paper. But when I told my parents, the air in the kitchen changed. My mom hugged me, her "that's our girl," a little too bright. My dad ruffled my hair, a gesture usually reserved for Ariana. And Ariana, she smiled. It was her perfect, polished, pageant smile. But her eyes, they'd gone flat, like someone had switched off the lights behind them. She said, "Wow, brainiac, guess they just give those to anyone now." And the laugh that followed was a little too sharp, a little too loud. It was the first time her sunshine felt like a heat lamp, meant to scorch, not warm. That was the seed. The scholarship to Oregon State for psychology was the water that made it sprout. It wasn't a full ride, but it was mine. It was validation that existed outside of her orbit. The night I got the letter, we had a family dinner. Ariana was home from her first year of a graduate communications program. She'd chosen mostly, I think, because it sounded impressive at parties. She was talking about media theory, her hands weaving through the air, holding court. I waited for a lull, my heart a trapped bird in my ribs, and slid the letter onto the table. The silence was absolute. Then came the congratulations, my mother's eyes shiny with tears, my dad beaming, and Ariana. She reached over, took the letter, her fingers leaving faint grease marks on the pristine paper. She read it slowly, every word. Then she looked up, and that flatness was back, but now it was edged with something else. A calculation. Corvallis. That's cute. Really cozy. You'll do great there, Joels. It's a perfect fit for you. The subtext hung in the air, thicker than the smell of pot roast. Small, for a small person. 2 months later, Ariana took a leave of absence from her grad program. Stress, she said. The pressure was too much. She moved back home into her old room, which now felt less like a nest and more like a command center. Her smiles at me became museum pieces, behind glass, carefully preserved, and utterly lifeless. College was supposed to be my awakening, and at first it was. Corvallis was gray and green and smelled of damp earth and ambition. I loved my classes. I made a few friends. Not a constellation like Ariana would have, but a few steady bright stars. For the first time, I felt my own gravity. It was terrifying and exhilarating. Then the glitches started. The first one was so small, I almost dismissed it as bureaucratic noise. A scholarship refund was supposed to be direct deposited for books. The amount was off. Not by a lot, $127.50 short. I called the financial aid office, was put on hold for 45 minutes, and finally reached a hurried-sounding woman who said, "The system shows the full amount was dispersed. You'll need to check with your bank." I did. The bank showed the smaller amount. I spent days caught in a loop of automated phone trees and vague apologies. I ended up eating a lot of ramen that month, chalking it up to life. A weird, annoying life tax. Then the forms. I applied for a competitive research assistant position with Dr. Evans, a professor whose work on cognitive behavioral therapy I admired. The application required a sealed faculty recommendation. I got one from my stats professor, handed it in personally. A week later, I got a generic rejection email. Confused, I worked up the courage to ask Dr. Evans, after class, if there was any feedback. He gave me a polite, distant look. "Your application was incomplete, Miss Reed. No recommendation was submitted." I protested. Gently, he sighed, the sigh of a man who hears excuses for a living. "The system is the system. Better luck next time." I felt a hot flush crawl up my neck. I'd handed it in. I had. Hadn't I? The doubt was a tiny, insidious worm. Maybe I'd forgotten. Maybe I dreamed it. This was the beginning of the gaslighting, though I didn't know the term then. I just knew the ground beneath me, which had finally felt solid, was turning spongy. The next strike was digital. I tried to log into the campus portal to register for spring classes. Access denied. Account flagged for suspicious activity. My stomach dropped straight through the floor. I raced to the IT help desk, my breath coming in short pants. The student worker, clicking through my account, frowned. "Says here multiple login attempts from an unrecognized IP were detected. Looks like someone was trying to brute force the password. We've reset it. Use a stronger one." He said it like he was telling me to recycle. I stood there trembling. Who? Why? The answer, the unthinkable answer, was a ghost that flitted at the edge of my mind. I'd call home and Ariana would sometimes answer, "Hey, Joels, how's the thrilling world of psych? Anyone analyzing your dreams yet?" Her tone was light, teasing, normal. And I'd push the ghost away. No, not Ariana. She was my sister. She was bored and maybe a little bitter, but she wasn't a saboteur. That was paranoia. That was the kind of thing I would study, not live. But the universe, or whoever was pulling the strings, wasn't done. A classmate, Sarah, pulled me aside after a study group. She looked uncomfortable, twisting her pen. "Jolie, I don't know how to say this. Did you complain about me to the tutoring center?" I stared, blank. "What? No. Why?" She bit her lip. "I got a note saying a student I tutored in Psych 101 filed a complaint about my methods, saying I was condescending. You're the only one I tutored from that class." The room tilted. "It wasn't me, Sarah. I swear on everything." She nodded, but the trust in her eyes had a crack in it now.
Then came the plagiarism warning. It landed in my student email with a soundless nuclear boom. It was from the Dean of Students' office. A paper I'd submitted for my developmental psychology class had been flagged by Turnitin for a 35% similarity score. Not for copying another paper, but for using large, uncited chunks from a series of obscure online psychology forums. Forums I had never, ever visited. The email was cold, formal. A meeting was required. Possible disciplinary action. I remember sitting in my dorm room, the gray Oregon light bleeding through the blinds, that email glowing on my screen. My hands were ice. My heart was a frantic drum solo against my ribs. This wasn't a glitch. This wasn't a mistake. This was an attack. A targeted, malicious campaign to make me look incompetent, unethical, and unhinged. I thought about the missing money, the lost form, the hacked account, Sarah's bruised trust, and now this, the academic death penalty. They were all isolated incidents, but together they formed a pattern, a signature. And with a sick, lurching certainty that started in my gut and flooded my brain with cold static, I knew. It was Ariana. The ghost wasn't a ghost anymore. It was a living, breathing person sitting in my childhood home, probably smiling at my parents, while she systematically dismantled my future. The betrayal was so profound it was physical. I vomited into my tiny trash can, the acid burning my throat. I cried, but they were angry, silent tears that scalded my cheeks. The person I'd idolized, the sun I'd orbited, wasn't just cooling. She had become a black hole, and she was trying to swallow me whole. I had 2 weeks until the meeting with the dean's office. 2 weeks to prove my innocence against evidence I didn't create. I felt the walls closing in. The injustice of it was a taste of copper and bile in my mouth. She wasn't just stealing from me. She was stealing me, my credibility, my work, my future. And she was doing it from the shadows, where no one would ever think to look for her. That's when I realized something, sitting there on the cold linoleum floor, the taste of vomit still in my mouth. The old Jolie, the satellite, the stagehand, she would have crumbled. She would have tried to explain, to plead, to fix it quietly without making waves. But that Jolie was being erased. And in the hollow space she left behind, something new was stirring. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was a cold, clear, focused determination. She thought I was small. She thought I was cozy. She thought I would break. But I was a psychology student, and I was just starting to understand the principles of behavior, of motivation, of consequence. And the first rule of any conflict: never bring a plea to a war that's already been declared. I had 2 weeks. And I wasn't going to spend them crying. I was going to spend them hunting. The silence after I sent that email was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. It was a physical pressure in my dorm room, thick with the smell of dust and my own fear sweat. I stared at my inbox, the screen's glow the only light in the gathering dusk. I was playing a dangerous game, and the chessboard was my own life. The replies trickled in. My mom: "Oh, honey, we're here for you. Call us. It must be a misunderstanding." My dad: "Be proactive, Jolie. Schedule a meeting. Present your case logically." Their concern was a warm blanket I desperately wanted to curl up in, but it was also a reminder of the narrative Ariana had spent a lifetime crafting. I was the sweet, slightly fragile one who needed handling. Then Ariana's reply. It came an hour later. Subject line: family update, need advice. "Hey Joels, just saw this. That sounds awful. Really, really awful. I hate that you're going through this. You've always been such a rule follower, so this must be terrifying. Listen, I know the system. Academia is full of petty bureaucrats who love to flex on students. My advice: don't go in there defensive. It makes you look guilty. Go in humble. Apologize for any unintentional oversight. Maybe you cited something wrong in your notes. It happens. Throw yourself on their mercy. Sometimes admitting a small fault is the way to avoid a bigger punishment. If you want, I can look over the paper for you, see if I can spot where things might have gotten tangled. I'm good at this stuff. Love you. Don't stress. It'll work out. Ari. I read it 5 times. Each time, the subtext rose to the surface like oil on water. You've always been such a rule follower, reinforcing the idea that I was rigid, maybe prone to cracking under pressure. Apologize for any unintentional oversight, planting the seed of confession even for a crime I didn't commit. I can look over the paper for you and offer to get her hands on the very document she'd likely tampered with to discover the error herself and become my savior. It was masterful. It was poison distilled into the shape of concern. My hands shook, but not with fear now, with a white-hot, clarifying anger. She wasn't just attacking me, she was scripting my surrender. She wanted me to walk into that meeting and confess to her crime. I didn't reply. Instead, I spent the next 48 hours in a state of manic, sleepless preparation. I pulled all-nighters, but not for exams. I recreated my entire paper from scratch, digging up every draft, every note, every source PDF. I built a forensic timeline. I printed out the Turnitin report and, with a highlighter that screamed yellow in the dim library carrel, marked every single plagiarized passage. Then I painstakingly proved with my own notes and early drafts that those passages were not in my original work. I created a binder. It was my shield. The meeting was in a beige office that smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. The dean of students representative, a woman named Brenda with a tight bun and tired eyes, sat across from me. Dr. Evans was there too, his expression unreadable. I placed my binder on the table with a soft thump. I didn't go in humble. I went in clinical. I spoke like I was presenting a case study, detached, evidence-based. As you can see in Exhibit A, my initial outline contains no reference to the Parenting Pulse Forum. The first draft, time-stamped October 12th, shows my original analysis here on page 4. The plagiarized text, which appears in the submitted version, contradicts my own thesis statement, as highlighted here. I sounded calm. I sounded rational. Inside, my organs were vibrating like plucked strings. Brenda flipped through the binder. Dr. Evans leaned forward, peering at the documents. The silence stretched. Finally, Brenda looked up. "This is very thorough, Ms. Reed. The discrepancy is unusual." Dr. Evans cleared his throat. "The writing style in the flagged sections is notably different, more colloquial." It wasn't an exoneration. It was a stalemate. "Given the unusual circumstances and your documentation, we will mark this as an unresolved discrepancy for now. No formal disciplinary action will be taken. However, the flag will remain on your submission record. We advise extreme caution with your digital materials moving forward." I walked out of that room feeling hollow. I'd stopped the bleeding, but the wound was still open, infected. The flag was there, a permanent whisper of doubt on my record. The injustice was a stone in my shoe I'd have to walk with forever. And Ariana knew. She had to, because the next glitch was more brazen. It was an email sent from what appeared to be my student account to the head of the psychology department and my capstone project advisor, Dr. Yates. "Dear Dr. Yates, I am writing to formally cancel my scheduled capstone project review scheduled for next Friday due to unforeseen personal circumstances and a reassessment of my academic commitments. I have decided to withdraw from the honors track. I apologize for any inconvenience. Sincerely, Jolie Reed." I saw it because Dr. Yates, a kind man with a bristly mustache, forwarded it to me with a single concerned line. "Jolie, I hope everything is okay. Please come see me." My blood turned to slush in my veins. This wasn't just sabotage. This was termination. The capstone review was the gateway to graduating with honors, to my letters of recommendation for grad school. It was the keystone of my entire undergraduate arch. Cancel that, and the whole thing crumbles. This was the line, the final unforgivable line. She wasn't just trying to make me stumble anymore. She was trying to blow up the bridge while I was still on it. I ran to the campus tech office, not the student help desk, but the actual IT security department. I was crying now, real, messy tears of panic. I shoved my phone with the forwarded email at the first person I saw, a guy in a graphic tee hunched over 3 monitors. Someone is impersonating me. They're trying to ruin my degree. His name was Noah. He had the calm, weary demeanor of someone who spent his days cleaning up digital dumpster fires. He listened, took my laptop, and started clicking. He pulled up login logs for my student account. "See here," he said, pointing to a string of code. "Successful login, last Tuesday, 2:14 p.m. IP address resolves to Portland, residential ISP." He scrolled. Another one. "Thursday, 10:03 p.m., same IP." He looked at me. "You go home often?" "No," I whispered. "My sister lives there." His eyebrows lifted a millimeter. He kept digging. He traced the spoofed email. It wasn't just sent from a similar address. It was a near-perfect replica, 1 character off, jolie.read@universitymail.com instead of jolie.read@universitymail.com, a lowercase l instead of a capital I, the kind of thing you'd miss at a glance. A hunter's trick. "This is deliberate," Noah said. "This is targeted harassment, possibly fraud." He helped me file an official report with campus security, a dry, bureaucratic process that felt like shouting into a pillow. But Noah gave me his card. "If you find anything else, any weird financial stuff, let me know. This is messed up. Financial stuff. The missing $127.50. It seems so small now, a pebble before the landslide. But Noah's words rang in my head. I logged into my student financial portal, the one I'd avoided since that first glitch. I navigated to the disbursement history. The scholarship refund was listed in full, but my bank records showed less. I'd always assumed it was a university error, but now a new chilling thought occurred. I called the bank. After navigating a gauntlet of identity verification, I asked, "Can you see if any other accounts have been linked for transfers from my student deposit account?" The representative put me on the hold. When she came back, her voice was careful, professional. "I show that on October 15th, an external account ending in 8891 was added as a transfer beneficiary for automated partial transfers. A transfer of $127.50 was initiated on October 20th. My breath stopped. "What is the name on account 8891? For security, I cannot disclose that. You would need to file a formal fraud inquiry." I didn't need her to disclose it. I knew, with a certainty that felt like falling. I hung up. I sat in the middle of my dorm room floor, the water-stained carpet blurring beneath me. She wasn't sabotaging me for the thrill of it. She was funding her sabotage with my own money, my scholarship money, the money that was supposed to buy my books, my food, my freedom. She was making me pay for my own destruction. The scale of it crashed over me. This wasn't a sisterly spot. This was a covert operation. This was financial theft, identity fraud, academic fraud. This was a campaign. And I had been fighting it like it was a series of bad luck, playing whack-a-mole with each symptom while the disease metastasized. The nice way had failed. Explaining had failed. Documenting had only gotten me a stalemate. I was drowning, and Ariana was on the shore, not just refusing to throw a rope, but quietly selling the rope I might have used. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the water-stained ceiling of my dorm room, listening to the hum of the mini-fridge. The anger had burned down to something harder, colder, and more durable. Resolve. I thought about going to my parents, but what would I say? Ariana is a criminal genius who's been hacking me and stealing from me for a year?
They'd see the sister they knew, the charming, if currently adrift, golden child, and they'd see me, stressed, paranoid, making wild accusations. She'd already laid the groundwork for that. I was the one with the academic integrity issues. I was the one who was struggling. No, going to them was a dead end. It was a courtroom where Ariana was the beloved local celebrity and I was the unreliable witness. I needed a different kind of authority. I needed armor.
The next morning, I looked up family law and civil litigation attorneys in Corvallis. I found Meera Singh. Her website said she specialized in domestic torts and digital harassment. I called, my voice shaking only a little. I gave her the 30-second version. My sister is impersonating me, stealing from me, and trying to get me expelled. I have some evidence. I need to know what I can do. There was a pause on the line. Then, in a voice that was both warm and razor sharp, she said, "Come to my office at 4. Bring everything." Meera's office was all clean lines and soft light, but she herself was a contained storm. She listened without interruption as I spilled it all. The money, the plagiarism, the fake email, the IP addresses, the history. I showed her my binder, Noah's report, the bank statement. I cried, finally, great heaving sobs of exhaustion and fury. She handed me a box of tissues and waited. When I was done, she stapled her fingers. "What you're describing is a pattern of fraud, identity theft, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and possibly computer crimes. The evidence is compelling, but it's largely circumstantial for a criminal case. The IP address is to a household, not an individual. The bank account name is the missing link. So she gets away with it?" The despair was a tidal wave. "No," Meera said, a slow smile touching her lips. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a chess master who sees a path. "You said graduation is in, 6 weeks?" I nodded. "Good. Here is what you are going to do. You are going to become the most boring, predictable, untroubled student on campus. You will secure your accounts with 2-factor authentication on a new device she's never touched. You will change every password, every security question, and don't use real answers. Make them random and write them down. You will not confront her. You will not hint at your suspicion. You will feed her the narrative she wants to hear, that you are stressed, barely hanging on, but obediently following her advice. I have to lie to her? You have to survive her," Meera corrected. "Meanwhile, I will help you draft a formal demand for restitution and a cease and desist letter, but we will not send it yet. We will wait." "For what?" "For her to make a mistake. Right now, she's operating in the dark, thinking you're blind. The most dangerous predator is one who feels safe. We let her feel safe. We let her get bold. And when she's at her boldest, when she's so sure of her victory she can't help but show her hand, that's when we have her." She leaned forward. "Jolie, people like this have a script in their head. They need to see you play your part, the defeated, exposed fraud. If you deviate from the script, if you show strength, they often panic. They escalate. They get sloppy. We need her to be sloppy in a way we can capture." It was a plan, a terrifying, passive, waiting plan. It went against every instinct to scream, to fight, to expose her right now, but it was a plan. I left Meera's office with a list of instructions and a weight in my chest that was somehow both heavier and lighter. I had an ally. I had a strategy. I was no longer just a victim. I was a plaintiff in waiting. The next few weeks were an exercise in surreal performance art. I called home. I made my voice small and tired. "Yeah, the meeting was okay. They didn't punish me, but it's on my record. Dr. Yates is being understanding about the capstone thing. He's letting me reschedule. It's just a lot, Ari." I could almost hear her smiling through the phone. "See, I told you. Humility. It's all about playing the game." "I was right," you said. The lie like ash on my tongue. I fed her crumbs, and she grew bolder. A strange charge appeared on my student account for a parking permit I never ordered. A rumor reached me through a friend of a friend that I was cheating in my stats class. The attacks were smaller, more frequent, like she was getting impatient, like a cat batting at a mouse that wasn't dying fast enough. Noah, now my clandestine tech ally, helped me set up a digital tripwire, a hidden encrypted log of all activity on my key accounts, a way to trace, in real time, any intrusion. And then, 3 weeks before graduation, it happened. Noah called me at 11 p.m. She's in, right now. She's logged into your student email from the Portland IP. She's not just checking it, she's composing. My heart hammered against my sternum. Can you see it? Not the content, not without a warrant, but I can see the recipient. It's being drafted to the dean of students, the head of the psychology department, and the university registrar. BCC'd to a few generic student news email addresses. She wasn't just whispering in shadows anymore. She was preparing a megaphone. She was going for the kill shot, the public, irreversible accusation that would torch my reputation just days before I crossed the stage. This was it, the escalation Mira predicted, the sloppiness born of overconfidence. I thanked Noah, my voice eerily calm. I hung up, I didn't sleep, I sat in the dark, watching the minutes tick by. At 8:03 the next morning, the email hit my inbox. A copy, because I was, of course, on the recipient list. The subject line was, "Urgent, Academic Fraud and Systematic Cheating by Jolie Reed." It was a masterpiece of malice. It listed in bullet point detail every rumor, every planted seed, the plagiarism, the fake tutoring complaints, the admitted capstone withdrawal. It claimed I had bribed a TA for exam answers. It said I was a sociopathic manipulator who was deceiving the entire department. It was signed with a flourish of psychotic irony, a concerned classmate. But it wasn't sent from a fake account this time. In her haste, in her boldness, in her absolute certainty that I was too broken to fight back, she had sent it from her own personal Gmail account, the one linked to her name, Ariana Marie Reed. I stared at the sender address. A laugh bubbled up in my chest, harsh and jagged. It was the mistake, the golden, glorious, fatal mistake. She had handed me the knife wrapped in her own fingerprints. I hit print. The whir of the printer was the sound of a trap snapping shut. I gathered the warm pages, the smell of toner like victory. I didn't feel joy. I felt a profound, chilling stillness. The hunt was over. Now it was time for the reckoning.
The silence after Mira's words wasn't empty. It was full of the low, electric hum of a plan clicking into its final, deadly alignment. We wait for graduation day. It was audacious. It was terrifying. It was perfect. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't just reacting. I was orchestrating. The feeling was nothing like the warmth of victory. It was a cold, surgical focus, like preparing a sterile field before an operation. My emotions were no longer a liability. They were tools to be deployed. My fear became a blueprint for caution. My anger became the fuel for meticulous attention to detail. "What's the first step?" I asked Mira, my voice a low monotone in my quiet dorm room. "First, you play your part. You react to that email exactly as she expects you to. Panicked, defensive. Then you go dark. You become a ghost. Let her stew in the silence. Second, we meet. Tomorrow. Bring every single piece of evidence you have. Digital, physical, everything. We're building a vault, not a case file." The performance began immediately. I drafted a reply to the concerned classmate email, sending it only to the official university addresses, not the student news BCCs. I made it shaky, indignant, full of wounded pride. "These accusations are categorically false and libelous. I am consulting with advisors and legal counsel. I demand a retraction." It was the flailing of a cornered animal. It was exactly what Ariana would want to see. Then I went dark. I stopped answering her texts. I let my parents' calls go to voicemail. I became a black hole, absorbing her attacks and giving back nothing. Noah confirmed the increased login attempts on my accounts, frantic, clumsy pokes at the digital fortress we'd built. She was trying to see inside, to gauge the damage. The silence was driving her mad. Good. The next day, in Mira's office, we laid out the evidence like pieces of a grim mosaic on her large, glass-topped desk. The printed email from Ariana's account was the centerpiece. Around it, we arranged Noah's IP logs, highlighted and annotated, the bank fraud inquiry paperwork, the fake email forensic analysis from the University IT Security Office, which Noah had officially escalated, my own binder of defense against the plagiarism charge, printouts of text messages where Ariana offered her advice, which now read like a villain monologue. Mira stapled her fingers, her eyes scanning the tableau. "It's a story," she said finally. "A story of a sustained, malicious campaign. But for a civil court, or even a university disciplinary board, we need to connect the dots for them in a way that leaves no room for sisterly misunderstanding." She picked up the bank document. "This is the linchpin, the money. It moves this from mean girl territory to fraud. We need the name on that account." She made a call to a private investigator she sometimes worked with, a discreet, expensive man named Carl. She explained the situation, the account number. "We need a confirmation of beneficial ownership, a photograph of a statement, anything that ties it to her at that address." She listened, nodded. "Do it, discreetly. Mail fraud statutes apply if we can show she intercepted and rerouted financial documents." The plan was taking shape, becoming a three-dimensional chessboard. We weren't just collecting evidence, we were constructing a narrative so airtight that when the lid blew off, there would only be one possible conclusion. Mira then drafted 2 documents. The first was a formal, sealed letter to the Dean of Students and the University General Counsel. It outlined in dry, precise legal language the entirety of the harassment campaign, presented the evidence, and requested a confidential meeting to secure my academic standing prior to graduation. It did not name Ariana explicitly yet. It referred to a known individual residing at my parents' address. It was a preemptive strike to inoculate the administration against whatever public scene Ariana might try to create. "We hand-deliver this," Mira said, sliding it across to me in a heavy cream-colored envelope. "1 week before graduation, not a day sooner. We want them informed, but we don't want a leak. We want them to have just enough time to be concerned, but not enough time to act before the ceremony." The second document was the revenge, or rather, the vessel for it. Mira called it the contingency package. It was a simple, letter-sized manila envelope. Inside would go a curated selection of the evidence, a copy of the email from her account, the IP logs showing access from our home, the bank fraud summary. Enough to be undeniable, but not the full, overwhelming dossier. The package would be sealed. "This," Mira said, holding the empty envelope, "is your insurance policy. You carry this with you on graduation day. If she does nothing, you graduate, we serve her with the civil suit and the cease and desist on the following Monday, and her world ends quietly. But if she tries to make a scene," she looked at me, her dark eyes intense, "you give this to the highest authority present. You do not engage. You do not explain. You hand over the proof, and you let it do the talking." The genius of it was its simplicity. It turned her potential aggression into her own trap. If she attacked publicly, she would be attacking into the teeth of pre-prepared, irrefutable evidence. She would be creating the very audience for her own humiliation. "What if she doesn't do anything at graduation?" I asked, a part of me still clinging to the faint, frayed hope that the sister I once knew might still exist somewhere beneath the monster. Mira's smile was thin. "Then she gets a process server at Mom and Dad's house on Monday morning, and she has to explain to them why she's being sued for identity theft and intentional infliction of emotional distress. There is no scenario where she wins. There are only scenarios where she loses quietly or loses spectacularly. The choice is hers." "The choice is hers," the phrase echoed. For so long, I'd had no choices. Now, I was giving her one. A final, fatal one. The next 2 weeks were an exercise in psychological warfare and excruciating patience. I attended my classes. I aced my finals. I finalized my capstone project, which Dr. Yates accepted with warm praise, none of the wiser to the bomb ticking beneath the surface of my academic life. I was a model student, a serene island in a sea of my own making. Inside, I was a coiled spring. I had one close call. My mother called, her voice thick with worry. "Jolie, honey, Ariana says you're not returning her texts. She's worried sick about you. She said there's some ugly rumor going around at your school. She's trying to defend you, but you're not talking to her." The old Jolie would have crumbled at the concern in her voice. The new Jolie took a slow, silent breath. "I'm just overwhelmed, Mom. Finals, the capstone, that email thing shook me. I just need to focus. Tell Ariana I'm okay. I'll call after graduation." I poured just enough brittle stress into my voice to sound beleaguered, not suspicious. "Okay, sweetie," Mom said, but the doubt was there. I'd created a crack in the family facade, just a hairline fracture. It pained me, but it was necessary. The foundation had to be tested before it could be rebuilt on truth. A package arrived from Carl, the PI. Inside, in a plain folder, was a grainy but clear photograph of a bank statement retrieved from the recycling at my parents' house. The account number ending in 8891. The name? Ariana M. Reed. The address? My parents' home. The statement showed the $127.50 transfer from my university disbursement account, labeled Recurring Transfer, J, Scholarship. I stared at it. There was no emotion left, just a cold, final click. The last piece of the puzzle. The motive, laid bare. It wasn't just about jealousy. It was about entitlement. She felt entitled to my success, to my money, to the life I was building, because in her mind, any light that shone on me was stolen from her. She was reclaiming what she saw as hers.
A week before graduation, as planned, I hand-delivered the sealed letter to the Dean of Students' office. I asked to see the dean personally, citing a time-sensitive and highly sensitive matter of academic security. I was ushered into a quiet, wood-paneled office. Dean Whitaker was a tall, grave man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. I placed the envelope on his desk. "Dean Whitaker," I said, my voice steady, rehearsed. "My name is Jolie Reed. I am graduating next week. This letter from my attorney details a prolonged campaign of academic sabotage, identity fraud, and harassment that I have been subjected to for over a year. The perpetrator is a family member. The evidence is enclosed. I am delivering this to you now, in confidence, to ensure that my degree and my record are secured, and to prepare the university for the possibility of a disruptive incident at the commencement ceremony." He opened the letter, his eyes scanning the legalese. They widened slightly as he read. He looked up at me, his expression a blend of professional concern and dawning horror. "Miss Reed, this is extraordinary and deeply troubling. I have lived it," I said simply. "All I want is to graduate, to have the day I earned. My attorney and I have a plan to manage the source of this harassment, but we wanted the university to be forewarned." He read further, nodding slowly. "The evidence seems compelling. I will review this immediately with General Counsel. And you have my assurance, Miss Reed, that your academic standing is not in question. Not based on this." He paused. "Do you anticipate this individual causing a scene at commencement?" I met his gaze. "I believe she will try to. She sent a defamatory email to this office just a few weeks ago. She craves a public reckoning. I intend to deny her the satisfaction of a reaction, but I will be prepared with proof should she force the issue into the public arena." Dean Whitaker leaned back, steepling his fingers, much like Mira did. "I see. Well, thank you for your professionalism in this dreadful situation. The university will support you, discreetly. If there is an incident, security will be briefed. You have my direct cell number. Do not hesitate to use it on the day." I left his office feeling like I had just enlisted a powerful, silent ally. The institution was now on my side, The board was set. The final days were a blur of surreal normalcy. I packed up my dorm. I bought a new dress for graduation. A simple, elegant navy blue sheath. A suit of armor in soft fabric. I practiced my calm face in the mirror, the serene, slightly tired smile of a graduate who'd worked hard, not the grimace of a soldier going to war. The night before graduation, I sat on my stripped bed, the sealed manila envelope, the contingency package, in my hands. It felt heavy with potential energy. I'd placed a single, typed cover sheet on top of the documents inside. Evidence of systematic harassment and fraud by Ariana Reed against Jolie Reed, submitted in response to any public allegations made on June 12th. I thought about Ariana. Was she pacing our parents' house, vibrating with anticipation? Was she rehearsing her lines? Choosing her outfit? Something designed to look both sympathetic and authoritative when she stood to denounce me? I could see it so clearly. The dramatic rise, the projected tearful voice. I'm so sorry to do this, but as her sister, I can no longer stay silent. A cold, calm certainty settled over me. She would do it. The script in her head demanded it. The years of hidden work, the stolen money, the forged emails, they were all just the prelude. The climax had to be public. It had to be a performance. She needed to see my face crumple in front of everyone. She needed the gasps, the stares, the validation of my destruction. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. But I knew who it was. Unknown. Ready for tomorrow? Big day. The truth always comes out, Jules. Always. She couldn't help herself. A final cryptic taunt. A last poke to see if I'd flinch. I didn't reply. I simply saved the number under a new contact. The Witness. I slept that night. A deep, dreamless, almost comatose sleep. When I woke, the morning of graduation was bright and clear. I dressed with care. I applied a little makeup. I ate a bland breakfast. I felt like an astronaut on launch day, running through a final silent checklist. I placed the sealed manila envelope into a slim, elegant portfolio. I slid my phone, my keys, and a tube of lip balm next to it. Normal things. The envelope didn't look like a weapon. It looked like a graduation program. My parents texted that they were on their way, that they were so proud, that they'd meet me at the arena. Ariana, they said, was riding with them. The arena, where thousands would gather, where my name would be called, where she would be sitting, waiting for her cue. I took a final look around my empty dorm room. This was where I'd cried, panicked, doubted, and plotted. This was where the satellite had learned to become its own sun. I closed the door. The walk to the graduation arena was a tunnel of sound and color. Robes, hats, laughing friends, anxious families. The air smelled of grass, perfume, and anticipation. I found my place in the line of psychology graduates. Sarah was there. She gave me a small, hesitant smile. I returned it, warm and genuine. No one here knew about the war. To them, I was just Jolie Reed, graduating with honors. Through the crowd, I saw them, my parents, beaming, waving frantically. My mom had tears in her eyes. My dad's chest was puffed out. And next to them, standing tall, was Ariana. She was dressed in a stunning, ice blue dress that was just a shade too formal, too eye-catching for a family member at a graduation. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like a keynote speaker, not a spectator. She scanned the crowd of graduates, her eyes sharp, hunting. They found me, and she smiled. It was her widest, most brilliant, most terrifying smile. A smile that said, "The curtain is about to rise." I held her gaze for a 3 count. I didn't smile back. I didn't frown. I simply looked at her. my expression neutral, almost curious, as if observing a fascinating specimen. Then she gave a slow, deliberate nod, an acknowledgement. I see you. A flicker of confusion passed through her eyes, so fast I might have imagined it. Then the smile hardened, cemented back into place. She turned to say something to my mother, no doubt a comment about how nervous I looked. The processional music swelled. We began to march. The roar of the crowd was a wall of sound. I kept my eyes forward, my posture straight, the portfolio held loosely at my side. My heart was not racing. It was beating a slow, steady, powerful drumbeat. Thump, thump, thump. The march of inevitability. We filed into our seats. The ceremony began. Speeches droned on in a haze. I didn't hear a word. I was tracking only one thing. The moment my name would be called, and the moment, before or after, that Ariana would make her move. The dean began reading names. The line shuffled forward. The air grew warmer, thicker. My palms were dry. My mouth was not. Then I heard it. Jolie Marie Reed, magna cum laude, departmental honors in psychology. This was it. The walk. The 30 steps to the stage that represented everything she'd tried to steal. I stood. I smoothed my robe. I took my first step into the aisle,
And from the audience, a voice, clear as a shattering bell, rang out. Stop! Everything froze. The dean's hand, mid-handshake with the previous graduate, halted. The gentle murmur of the crowd died instantly. All heads turned. Ariana was standing. She had a small, wireless microphone in her hand. God knows how she'd gotten it. Her ice blue dress was a splash of cold fire in the sea of dark robes and casual wear. Her face was a mask of pained courage. I am so sorry to interrupt, she said, her voice amplified, trembling with faux emotion. It echoed through the vast arena. But I cannot, in good conscience, let this go on. My name is Ariana Reed. I am Jolie's sister. A dramatic pause, a collective intake of breath from thousands of people. And I have to tell you all, Jolie Reed is a fraud. The silence was absolute. Stunned. She has cheated her way through this entire degree. Plagiarism, fabricated data, bribing teaching assistants. She's even stolen scholarship money. I have tried to get her help, to get her to stop, but she's in too deep. She's manipulative, she's sick, and she does not deserve to stand on that stage. She pointed a dramatic, accusatory finger at me, standing frozen in the aisle. Every eye in the arena was on me. I could feel the weight of their judgment, their shock, their morbid curiosity. This was her masterpiece, my public execution. I didn't look at her. I didn't react to the accusation. I simply turned my head, slowly, calmly, and looked up at the stage, at Dean Whitaker. He was looking back at me, his expression unreadable from this distance, but he gave me the slightest, almost imperceptible nod. The choice was hers, and she had made it. Spectacularly. I turned away from Ariana as if her words were nothing more than an annoying fly. I continued my walk down the aisle. Step by steady step, I climbed the stairs to the stage. The silence was now electric, confused. I could hear my own breath, the rustle of my robe. I walked across the stage to Dean Whitaker. He shook my hand, placed my diploma in the other, and leaned in, as if for a congratulatory hug. I spoke 3 quiet words into his ear. It's under my seat. He squeezed my shoulder, a gesture that looked like paternal pride to the crowd. He knew. He'd been briefed. Security, positioned at the edges of the stage, had been briefed. I turned, diploma in hand, to face the audience. I didn't smile. I didn't glare at Ariana. I simply looked out, a graduate accepting her due, then I walked off the opposite side of the stage. As I descended the steps, I saw movement in the crowd. 2 uniformed campus security officers and a man in a suit,
likely from the general counsel's office, were moving swiftly, purposefully, down the aisle toward my family's section. Ariana was still standing, microphone in hand, expecting the world to erupt around me. Instead, it was erupting around her. She saw the officers approaching. Her triumphant expression faltered, replaced by confusion, then dawning horror. The man in the suit reached her first. He spoke to her, his voice low but carrying in the hushed arena. "Miss Reed, I am with University Council. You need to come with us immediately. You are being detained for questioning regarding multiple allegations of fraud, identity theft, and disruption of a university ceremony." "What? No, she's the fraud!" Ariana's voice shrieked over the microphone, which she had forgotten she was holding. It echoed, shrill and panicked, a far cry from her poised accusation moments before. "The university," the man said, his voice cutting through hers with calm authority, "has already reviewed compelling evidence to the contrary, evidence you provided. Now please, come quietly or we will have you removed." The crowd's sympathy, which had been a fragile, uncertain thing moments ago, crystallized in an instant. The shift was almost audible. The sister making a scene, screaming hysterically as calm officials approached, while the graduate walked off the stage with quiet dignity. The story wrote itself. The villain wasn't who they thought. My parents were statues of shock. My mother's hands over her mouth, my father staring, uncomprehending. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I walked through the curtain at the back of the stage into the dim, cool backstage area. The sounds of the muted chaos followed me, then faded. I leaned against a concrete wall, the coolness seeping through my robe. I closed my eyes. I could hear my blood singing in my ears. It was over. The performance was done. The trap had sprung. And she was the one in the cage. I walked for what felt like miles, the sun tracing a slow arc across the too blue sky. The world continued with its mundane Saturday rhythms, people shopping, kids laughing on playgrounds, the smell of cut grass and barbecue, while mine had just been cleaved in two. My phone was a grick of silent vibration in my hand. I finally turned it off and slipped it into my portfolio, next to the now empty space where the envelope had been. I ended up at a small, nearly empty coffee shop on the edge of campus. It smelled of burnt espresso beans and cinnamon. I ordered a black coffee I didn't want and took a seat by the window. The adrenaline was receding, leaving behind a deep, bone-level fatigue and a strange, hollow ache. I had won. I was free. So why did I feel like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop? Because the other shoe wasn't Ariana's anymore. It was my parents'. An hour later, my coffee cold and untouched, I powered my phone back on. It exploded with notifications, dozens of missed calls, voicemails, texts. The texts were a frantic, heartbreaking tapestry. Mom, 12:47 p.m. Jolie, where are you? What is happening? Ariana is being taken by police. They say it's a mistake. Call me. Dad, 12:53 p.m. Jolie, call your mother. Now. Mom, 1:15 p.m. They won't let us see her. They're talking about fraud. What did you do? Dad, 1:22 p.m. We are in the University Administration Building, room 304. Get here, explain this. Then, a new thread, from Mira. Mira, 1:05 p.m. Dean Whitaker called me. The execution was flawless. The envelope was everything. University Council is formally involved. They've detained her for questioning. Campus security is holding her pending our decision to involve local PD. Your parents are demanding answers. This is the next phase. It will be harder. Are you ready? I stared at her last question. Are you ready? I had been ready for the confrontation, for the trap. I was not ready for the aftermath, for the bewildered hurt in my mother's texts, for the stern command in my father's. I took a shuddering breath and typed back, "Me, 1:45 p.m., on my way to them." The walk to the administration building was the longest of my life. Each step felt leaden. The building was a monument of cold, modernist glass and steel. Inside, the air conditioning was Arctic. A student worker at the front desk, wide-eyed with gossipy curiosity, directed me to room 304. It was a small, windowless conference room that smelled of lemon-scented disinfectant and stale anxiety. My parents sat on one side of a long, polished table. My mother's face was blotchy, her mascara smudged into dark shadows under her eyes. My father sat rigid, his jaw a hard line, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. They looked old. They looked like strangers. On the other side of the table sat Dean Whitaker and a severe-looking woman in a sharp suit, the general counsel, I presumed. Mira was there too, a calm, immovable object in the storm. All eyes turned to me as I entered. The door clicked shut with a sound of terrible finality. "Jolie?" My mother breathed, half rising from her chair. "What is going on? They have Ariana in some holding room. They're talking about criminal charges?" "Sit down, Elaine," my father said, his voice gravel. His eyes never left mine. "Jolie, explain." This was the confrontation I hadn't planned for. The legal trap was sprung, but the emotional minefield was just beginning. I remained standing, placing my portfolio on the table. I felt Mira's supportive gaze. "Ariana," I began, my voice surprisingly steady in the tomb-like room, "has been systematically trying to destroy my academic life for over a year. She hacked my student accounts. She plagiarized a paper in my name to get me accused of academic dishonesty. She stole $127.50 from my scholarship refund, and likely more we're still tracing. She sent a fake email trying to cancel my capstone project, and today she publicly accused me of being a fraud in front of thousands of people." I paused, letting the list hang in the frigid air. "I have proof of all of it." My mother shook her head, a frantic, denying motion. No, that's impossible. That's your sister. She loves you. She's been worried sick for you. She said you were under so much pressure, that you were making mistakes." "The mistakes were hers, Mom. She fabricated them. She planted the evidence. She was the pressure." My father leaned forward. "What proof?" Mira slid a folder across the table. It was a copy of the contents of the envelope. "Mr. and Mrs. Reed, with all respect, your daughter Jolie is the victim of a serious, premeditated campaign of harassment and fraud. This is a summary of the evidence, which includes digital forensics tracing unauthorized access to Jolie's accounts directly to the IP address of your home." She opened the folder, pointing. "This is a copy of an email sent 3 weeks ago accusing Jolie of systematic cheating sent from Ariana's personal Gmail account. This is a bank statement retrieved from your recycling showing an account in Ariana's name receiving automatic transfers from Jolie's scholarship fund." My mother stared at the documents as if they were written in an alien language. My father picked up the bank statement, his eyes scanning it. I watched the color drain from his face. He was a logical man, an engineer. He understood numbers, records, facts. The story they told was undeniable. This can't be," my mother whispered, but the conviction was bleeding from her voice, replaced by a dawning, horrific comprehension. "The university," Dean Whitaker interjected, his tone grave, "has verified this evidence. Mrs. Ariana Reed's actions constitute multiple violations of the Student Code of Conduct. Even as a non-student, her access and harassment fall under our jurisdiction, as well as potential criminal acts. We have banned her from campus permanently. We are prepared to refer the matter to the local district attorney for prosecution for identity theft and computer fraud. The decision," he said, looking at me, "is Jolie's."
The room focused on me again. My mother's eyes were pools of terrified pleading.
My father looked from the paper in his hands to me, his expression a storm of betrayal. But for the first time, I wasn't sure who he felt betrayed by. "Where is she now?" I asked. "In a security office downstairs," the general counsel said. "She has been informed of the evidence. She has, thus far, declined to make a statement without a lawyer." I thought of Ariana in a sterile room, her ice blue dress now a costume in a tragedy, her performance over. The image gave me no pleasure, only a cold, distant pity. "I want to see her," I said. A collective tension gripped the room. "Jolie, I don't think that's advisable," Mira said gently. "Alone," I added. My mother made a small, choked sound. My father just stared, as if seeing me for the first time. After a long moment, Dean Whitaker nodded to the general counsel. 5 minutes. An officer will be outside the door." They led me down a silent, fluorescent-lit hallway to a plain door. The campus security officer stationed there opened it for me. The room was small, featureless, with a table and 2 chairs. Ariana sat in one, her back to the door. She still wore her dress, but it was rumpled now. Her perfect hair had fallen in strands around her face. She was staring at the blank, cream-colored wall. She didn't turn as I entered and sat across from her. The door clicked shut, leaving us in a silence so deep I could hear the hum of the lights. Slowly she turned her head. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but dry. The mask was utterly gone. What was left was raw, ugly, and shockingly empty. There was no hatred, no defiance, just a vast, hollow nothing. "You knew," she said. Her voice was scraped raw, barely a whisper. It wasn't a question. "I figured it out," I corrected, my own voice quiet in the small space. A bitter, twisted smile touched her lips. "All of it? The money too?" "Especially the money." She nodded, as if confirming a private theory. "It wasn't about the money. It was so small. I just wanted to see if I could, to see if you would even notice. You were always so oblivious, so good. It was infuriating." This was the confession, not to a lawyer, not to our parents, to me, in this sterile little box. "Why, Ariana?" The question finally escaped, the one that had haunted me for months. Her head snapped up, and for a second the old fire flickered in her eyes. "What did you do? You existed. You were supposed to be the quiet one, the follower, the one who made me look better just by standing there. But then you started succeeding, on your own, with your little brain and your little books. People started looking at you, talking about you. My own parents, they got this stupid, proud gleam in their eyes when they said your name. My gleam!" Her voice cracked. "You took my place. You stole my narrative. The golden child, that was mine. You were just the shadow. And then you stopped being the shadow. You became a person. And I didn't know who I was supposed to be if I wasn't better than you." The psychology student and me listened, clinically diagnosing the narcissistic injury, the fragile ego, the external locus of self-worth. The sister in me just felt a profound, soul-crushing sadness. Her entire identity was a performance, and my genuine success had blown her script. "So you had to destroy me to feel like yourself again," I said, not a question. She shrugged, a pathetic, broken gesture. It wasn't about destruction. It was rebalancing, putting things back in their proper order. If you were exposed as a cheat, a liar, then I would be the good one again, the honest one, the one they could be proud of. You were supposed to break. You were supposed to cry, to confess, to run home. You were supposed to need me to fix it. But you just got quieter and harder. And then you baited me. That email you sent home whining about your integrity issue, that was bait, wasn't it? I didn't answer. My silence was confirmation enough. She let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob.
I walked right into it. And then today, you just stood there. You didn't even look at me. You just walked away. She sounded almost offended. That wasn't in the script. No, I said softly, standing up. My script was about survival. Yours was about a starring role. You got it. I hope it was everything you wanted. I turned to leave. Jolie, her voice stopped me, small and lost. What are you going to do? I looked back at her. The once sun, now a cinder in a cheap chair. I'm going to graduate. I'm going to move on. And you, I chose my words with the precision of a surgeon. You will face the consequences of your choices. The university will ban you. I will not press criminal charges if you sign a full, binding confession prepared by my attorney, agree to full financial restitution with a legally enforceable payment plan, and enter a long-term, intensive therapy program of my attorney's choosing. You will also write a letter of apology to every professor and administrator you impersonated or lied to. If you deviate from any of these terms, the civil suit for damages proceeds and the evidence goes to the district attorney. I laid out Mira's terms, the negotiated peace. It was mercy of a sort, but it was mercy with teeth, with oversight, with a price tag attached to every stolen dollar and every shattered night of sleep. She stared at me, her eyes wide. This was not the emotional breakdown she had envisioned. This was a contract. You've thought of everything. I had to. You left me no choice. I left her there, in that blank room, to contemplate the ruins of the story she'd written for us both. The fallout was a slow, painful earthquake. My parents, once the initial shock wore off, fractured along the fault lines of their own denial. My father, the engineer, accepted the evidence first. He was furious, a cold, silent fury directed at Ariana for her actions and at himself for his blindness. He helped Mira draft the financial restitution plan, his face ashen as he calculated the total sum of what she had taken and the cost of my legal fees. My mother took longer. She cycled through grief, anger at me for ruining the family, and a desperate, heartbreaking hope that it was all a terrible misunderstanding. It took her sitting in on one of the meetings with Mira and seeing the full chronological timeline of the attacks, seeing the dates, the IP logs, the fake email headers laid out like a prosecutor's exhibit for the last of her resistance to crumble. She didn't speak to me for a week. Then she showed up at the small apartment I'd rented in Corvallis, her eyes hollow. She didn't hug me. She just said, "I am so sorry, Jolie. I was her mother. I should have seen. I was just so busy looking at her light. I didn't see the shadow it was casting on you." It wasn't a full absolution, but it was a start.
Ariana, under the threat of criminal prosecution and a lawsuit that would bankrupt her, signed the confession. The document was a clinical, horrifying read. She admitted to everything. The transfer of funds was set up. She enrolled in an intensive outpatient therapy program for personality disorders and pathological envy. The apology letters were written, under Mira's supervision, stilted, legalistic, but acknowledging the facts. I graduated, officially. My diploma arrived in the mail. There was no ceremony for me, no cap and gown photos. I framed the diploma and hung it in my bare apartment. It looked less like an achievement and more like a medal from a war I hadn't wanted to fight. I got a job as a research assistant at the university, a position that had been held for me by a quietly supportive Dr. Yates. I applied to graduate programs in clinical psychology, my personal statement subtly informed by an understanding of familial trauma and covert aggression I wished I'd never had to learn. I moved into that small apartment in Corvallis. It was quiet. The walls were thin, but the only sounds were my own. I bought a plant and tried to keep it alive. I learned to cook for one. I slept through the night, mostly. The peace was not joyful. It was the peace of a battlefield after the guns have fallen silent. Littered with debris, but quiet.
I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. There's a difference. Victory implies a vanquished foe and celebration. Freedom is just the absence of the cage. You don't celebrate the absence of walls. You just learn to breathe again, to stretch your limbs without hitting bars. Sometimes at 3 a.m., I'd wake up with my heart pounding, dreaming of fake emails and echoing accusations. I'd check my bank account, a reflex I couldn't shake. I'd look over my shoulder in grocery stores. The psychological scars were deeper than the financial or academic ones. Trust was a language I had to relearn from scratch. Ariana moved out of my parents' house. She got a job in retail, living in a studio apartment in a different part of Portland. We have had no contact. The restitution payments come automatically from her account each month. I track them, not out of greed, but as a morbid confirmation that the new reality holds. My parents see her cautiously, under the guidance of their own therapist. Their relationship is a ghost of what it was, haunted by betrayal and careful boundaries. As for me, I'm rebuilding. Not a life of dramatic revenge or glittering success, but a life of quiet authenticity. I am no one's satellite. I am no one's shadow. I am a person who was almost erased, who learned to write her own name in permanent ink. So, do I think it was worth it? The planning, the waiting, the public detonation of my own family? Here's what I know. I gave her every chance to stop. I tried to fix things the nice way until the nice way became a path off a cliff. She chose, again and again, to escalate. She chose to fire the final shot in front of thousands of witnesses. All I did was make sure that when she pulled the trigger, it was pointed at her own foot. Telling the truth wasn't about winning. It was about stepping out of someone else's story and reclaiming the authority to narrate my own. The revenge wasn't in her humiliation. That was her own creation. The revenge was in the envelope under the seat. The revenge was in walking away whole while her world of lies collapsed in on itself. She thought she was the playwright, the director, and the star. I was just supposed to be the prop that broke on cue. I guess I just decided to be the stagehand who knew how to cut the lights. So that's where it stands. I'm in my apartment. The rain is tapping softly against the window, a familiar Portland sound, but it's just rain here, not an omen. My plant is alive. My work is meaningful. The silence is my own. I don't hate her. Hate would be a connection, a thread still tying us together. What I feel is more like the absence of connection, a void where a sister used to be. Sometimes the psychology student in me wonders about the roots of it all. The family system that created the golden child in the shadow, the parents who, without malice, fed the dynamic, the society that values charisma over quiet competence. I think about it, I study it, and in understanding it, I let it go. The lesson I took from it all is this: the most powerful revenge is not violence or screaming or matching cruelty with cruelty. It's unshakable clarity. It's seeing the game for what it is, refusing to play by the rules they set, and having the receipts to prove you never agreed to the rules in the first place. It's the quiet, meticulous work of building your own truth, brick by brick, until it's a wall they cannot scale and a house you can finally live in. It's stepping out of the shadow, not to cast one of your own, but to finally stand in your own light. So what do you think? Was letting her have that public stage only to have it collapse beneath her the right move? Or should I have exposed her privately and spared my family the spectacle? If you were in my shoes, would you have pressed criminal charges, or was the confession and restitution enough? Let me know in the comments. And if you believe that sometimes the quietest people are the ones you should never, ever underestimate, hit that subscribe button. Because the world is full of people who mistake kindness for weakness, and there are a lot more stories where the quiet ones finally decide to speak up. Thanks for listening.